Thanks for joining us. I am Shia. I use she, her pronouns, and I work at NESAWG as the programs assistant. And again, before we dive into this awesome program today, I want to just go over a few things with you all. So we are presenting this conference on land that was inhabited by the Nipmuc people. And as we heal from the destruction caused by colonization, we appreciate your support, solidarity, and continued learning. There's a really helpful source where you can see what native land you're inhabiting. And I encourage everyone to visit that link. And David just put it in the chat, so thank you. It's a really great resource. Oops. Oh, apologies, everyone. Oops, sorry about that. All right, so racial equity. We recognize that our agricultural system is built on stolen land and the forced labor and exploitation of stolen Black, Indigenous, and other people of color. And this conference aims to help address this harm and bring equity to the food system. We had some great BIPOC and white ally caucuses yesterday, and there's a wonderful list of BIPOC-led organizations that are listed on the right-hand side of the screen. This is great resources to send your support, money, equipment, and some connections. So that's a great list right there. And we have a number of sponsors for the NOFA Mass Conference that make the conference possible. And so I encourage you to hopefully purchase from them yesterday at the vendor tables and booths, and let them know that you appreciate their support. We also have an awesome auction that is happening. So we want to encourage folks to bid for some items at the auction, and I believe that is closing today at 6 o'clock. So definitely check that out. And thank you again, David, for sharing that in the chat. And that is the link for the auction. And there's also an online evaluation to give feedback for this session. We will share this link again at the end. Yeah, so we are going to just keep diving right on in. This is the Farm Bill Policy Roundtable. So thank you all again for joining us. And I just quickly want to read through our community agreements, make sure we are all on the same page today as we dive in. Be curious, open, and respectful. No one knows everything, but together we know a lot. You can't be articulate all the time, so give people the benefit of the doubt and ask questions. Please take care of yourself for the time that we are together. Confidentiality, don't speak for others without explicit permission, and don't share something communicated in a private or safe space. One mic, one voice at a time. Take space and make space. So if you're someone that's usually quiet, challenge yourself to speak up. And if you usually talk a lot, be mindful to leave room for others. Avoid jargon, acronyms, and industry language. Use inclusive language that's accessible for everyone. Be aware of time. Speak from your own experience. Use I statements. Challenge assumptions. Be conscious of your intent and your impact. No matter your intention, you're responsible for your impact. And expect and accept non-closure. We know this work takes time, so we are just planting the seeds knowing that we won't be able to harvest right away. And I will turn it over to our awesome host today.
Thank you so much, Shia, for bringing us together here, and thank you for everyone coming to this virtual event here after a full day hybrid yesterday. I'll say before we do our intros of our presenters here, I love seeing folks and getting those, a little bit of FaceTime here through this portal of Zoom here. So if folks are comfortable coming on screen, I'd love to be joined by you here. Go ahead and introduce myself. I'm Marty Dagoberto Driggs. I use he, him, and I am the policy director of NOFA Mass. And really, really grateful to be with you all today. If folks can introduce themselves in the chat there with your name, pronouns, and where you're calling from. I forgot to mention, I'm calling from present day Franklin County, Western Mass, Coleraine, ancestral lands, the Pecumtuck, Nipmuc, and Abenaki Confederacy. And I'll pass it to my co-presenter, Cristina.
Hi, everyone. I'm Cristina Cabrera. Chunchip Deer Spirit is my traditional name. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm the executive director of NESAWG, and I'm extremely happy to be here with you all. And I'll pass it on to Jason.
Hi, everyone. Jason Davidson, he, him, calling in from Washington, D.C. On the lands of the historical lands of the Anacostans. Glad to be here. And I will pass it to David.
I think just hosts are introducing themselves, right?
Yeah.
Backup. Thanks.
Oh, good. Yeah, David's helping us out in the back end there. Thanks, David. But we did want to thank you for it's great seeing everyone checking in the chats there. Hey, folks. We did have a couple poll questions before we get into it, and we were going to ask this one at the end as well. But we want to know where folks are at. This is usually when we start doing a hand raising kind of thing if we were all in person. But we want to know how familiar people are with the Farm Bill. So I think Shia has a poll queued up. There we go. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being not familiar at all, 10 being very familiar, where would you place yourself? And of course, no wrong answers. We just want to get an honest assessment of where folks are at. So thanks for doing that. Great. Get some live results here. This is fun. Let's give that I don't know, another 20 seconds. All right. Good. We're getting most responses seem to be in the 4 to 7 range, mid-range here. A couple of folks that are totally new to it. That's great. Cool. Oh, I see we have a timer on it. Or is that running to 1 minute, Shia?
As long as we want to keep it open.
right.
We have 2 questions in that first poll, so please
Great.
answer both questions.
All right, we'll give it 5 more seconds there. Got a lot to get to, so cool. All right, so highest is around 4, and pretty good spread there. So it's good. We got some folks that are new to this and some folks that are more experienced. So should be a good sharing here. Can we get to the next question, which is how likely are you to take action on the Farm Bill? Do we have that there, Shia? Am I not seeing it? All right.
So I'm just encouraging folks to scroll down to that second question there, which is how likely you are to take action.
Got it. There it is. I would hope it's high since you all showed up. You're all the advocates here, as I expected. Great. Well, hopefully by the end of this, you'll be better enabled with ways to do that. I think I'll get ready to dive right in on our Farm Bill intro. Yeah, let's go ahead and close that out. Thanks, Shia. All right. Well, yeah, so go to the next slide. We're here, to discuss what the Farm Bill is, who we are, our respective organizations, what we're doing in relation to the Farm Bill, and then leaving you all with ways to get involved and to hear your thoughts on how we can be organizing together to make best use of this monumental legislation, as we're about to learn, really shapes our food system in really significant ways. And we'll of course have time for Q&A and again to hear your thoughts. So with that, Yeah, let's get into it, shall we? So it's helpful to start with a little history before we get into the nuts and bolts of the Farm Bill. So the Farm Bill today is what we call a piece of omnibus legislation. It's a big bus with a lot of bills. That's how I remember it. An omnibus legislation. It's a large multi-part bill that contains lots of programs, policies, and funding. And we'll get into the current structure in a minute here, but something interesting to note is that the original Farm Bill dates way back to the Dust Bowl, and that's what you see pictured there. It's really, the original Farm Bill was really 3 separate related bills that were enacted in the 1930s as part of FDR's New Deal legislation. And so the Farm Bill came out then as a means to address two concurrent problems: the rock bottom prices for farmers due to overproduction and extensive hunger and poverty, both on and off farms. So early farm bills sought to tackle things like, catastrophic erosion and soil loss from drought and poor land stewardship, lack of credit for small farmers, basic rural infrastructure needs, unfair export and trade policies, et cetera. And these historic origins can still be seen in really how the Farm Bill is structured today. However, it's important to name that those early farm bills also in many cases explicitly excluded farmers of color and communities of color and how their programs were set up and delivered, and directly contributed to generations of land loss. For example, refusing to give loans or denying them program payments, which drove land loss for Black and Indigenous farmers, or immigration policies that exploited the labor of people of color while excluding them from accessing the land and capital to farm. So that's on top of the stolen land and labor underpinning our agricultural system that goes back to the founding of the country and founding of the colonies. So it's important to note that historical context, because we're still navigating it today. You don't need to look hard before you see the many places where racism is built into the structures of our current farm and food policy, and the opportunities for us as advocates to shift policies to be more equitable. So advocates and farmers have long been working for policy changes to address the structural inequity baked into federal agriculture and food policy. For example, dedicated funding for groups, including farmers of color who face that significant discrimination at the hands of the USDA, to redress ongoing harm, redesigning programs and policies to work more equitably so that the benefits do not disproportionately benefit larger farms at the expense of smaller, diversified, sustainable operations. And working together to improve these policies in the Farm Bill is a significant way to work to address inequity and to advance more equitable policies for everyone. And the next slide, really just lays out, we went through that one. Great, awesome. The historical context in the previous slide just gives a bit more detail on that history of how agricultural policy has upheld white supremacy, everything from the Homestead Act of 1862, which further stole more native held land, to failed Reconstruction impacting African-American populations. And the very first Farm Bill itself explicitly upheld systemic racism by excluding domestic workers and farm workers in social programs. And well, we have a few examples listed there, but we could spend a lot of time on the faults of the original Farm Bill and the first few there. But basically, what it has continued to be is that the Farm Bill essentially connects our plates, what we eat, what's available in the stores. It connects our food to the farmers, to the ranchers who produce that food, and to the natural resources, our soil, air, and water that make growing food possible. And so the Farm Bill is a package of legislation passed. It's supposed to be passed every 5 years, a little bit of wiggle room there, but it has tremendous impact on farming livelihoods, how food is grown, and what kind of foods are grown. It's covering programs ranging from crop insurance for farmers to healthy food access for low-income families, from beginning farmer training to support for sustainable farming practices. The Farm Bill sets up the stage for food and farm systems. And like I said, every 5 years, the Farm Bill expires and is updated. It has to be renewed every 5 years. So an interesting note is that if it is not renewed, if for whatever reason Congress can't get a Farm Bill through, all the programs revert back to the original Farm Bill. So it's something that historically has tended to force bipartisan collaboration to get something through what is really an extensive process of proposals, debates, has to go through both chambers, as we'll look at. And each one has a unique title, and the current Farm Bill is called the Agriculture Improvement Act of 2018. It was enacted in December of 18 and expires in 2023. And so we'll go to the next slide here. So what does the Farm Bill do? I hope folks will get that meme there, but I took some liberty and inserted that just to break this up a bit, because it's a lot. It's a big bill that can be somewhat disorienting. So you think about it, really, most of it is authorizing language. It creates or modifies programs in the federal government. And sometimes it's very specific, and sometimes it leaves a lot open for interpretation by those agencies. But the Farm Bills almost always include language about how farm and food programs should work. It determines how long a program should continue, whether it's permanent or if it expires after a certain number of years. Now, a really important thing to know is that the text will also define how the program is funded. So funding can be either mandatory, which it's guaranteed year after year, or it's just discretionary, meaning it has to be continually reauthorized in congressional budgets and appropriations. And on the advocate side, has to be continuously advocated for. And of course, the Farm Bill often includes language about who can use a given program. There's eligibility criteria. It contains priority status for certain types of farmers, like newer beginning farmers. And in the case of grant programs, the Farm Bill also determines, the maximum amounts that can be awarded, the length of the grant, other things like whether matching funds are required, et cetera. And I'm not going to get into all the details of the various titles on the next slide there, but there are these 12 titles. This omnibus, this huge legislation, has these 12 sections, and they're from commodities, conservation, trade, down the list here. And there's often some overlap, but this is the rough way that all of these policies are and programs are sorted. Now, as much as it does cover, and again, it's a huge piece of legislation, there are other issues directly related to agriculture that are not included in the Farm Bill because they fall outside the jurisdiction of the agricultural committees. And so they're considered under jurisdiction of other committees. So, for example, we have the farm worker rights and protections fall under the jurisdiction of House Education and Labor Committee, and Senate Health. So then we have the Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee that take up these other aspects. So it's not like a comprehensive food and agriculture bill, but it is a huge part of it. And as we see in the next slide, just gives you a graphical depiction of how much money we're talking about. In the last Farm Bill, $428 billion. And you can see how it's distributed, with the broad majority going to nutrition programs like SNAP. And then, then we have crop insurance, commodities, conservation programs, and then 1% miscellany. And then finally, I know we're breezing through this, and I was hoping we'd have a good amount of time for discussion here, but I will stop on this slide because this is the fun labyrinth here that just shows you how the Farm Bill is written by members in this parallel track. So you have the Senate Committee on Agriculture, Nutrition, and Forestry, and then the House Agriculture Committee, and each chamber drafts its own separate version of the Farm Bill, independent of the other chamber, at least to start, and then they have to go through these, interlacing process of consolidating those two versions. So there's hearings that could be in DC or other parts of the country, and then that gives members of Congress an opportunity to hear from expert witnesses on a wide array of issues. And the committee members will also review the legislative policies and priorities of other members in Congress who are not on the committee. And those are often ideas that are introduced in bills called marker bills, which we're going to talk about later on as far as a concrete way that we can get involved. I see a hand up here. David, do you mean to have your hand up?
Yeah, I was just wondering quick, will these slides be made available, or should people be taking a
Oh,
second
yeah.
notes of it?
Yes, we'll absolutely make these available. I know there's a lot to take on, so thank you for asking. Yeah, you can stop screen capping or writing vociferously there. But anyways, yeah. So the marker bills, and Jason, I don't know if you want to come on now and talk about marker bills, but we were gonna get into that. They're very important pieces. They can be the most effective way to introduce a new idea to improving an existing program. And so you'll be hearing advocacy organizations such as ours talk about these marker bills, they're usually not considered bills that will pass themselves. They're introduced to get the conversation going, to raise the profile of different issues, and to basically suggest pieces that will hopefully be incorporated into the final farm bill. Did I get that right, Jason? I know you work on this a lot more than I do.
Yeah, you got it.
Thanks. So the committees, they'll often solicit and consider ideas and opinions of farm, food, and rural advocacy organizations like ours. And of course, every voter, every eater, every person can help determine the farm bill by sending their, to their member of Congress, their ideas, their thoughts on these things. So once these committees have finished their hearings, they do the farm tours, the listening sessions, they begin to draft the farm bill. And like I said, each chamber independently, they go through a whole debate and markup process, meaning amending or changing, and then pass the final versions of their bill. And then, of course, they need to be consolidated. So they go to the floor to get considered, and then debated, amended, voted up, passed, etc. And then they have to go through a further conference committee process, bring it together until we have one final bill, hopefully, that Congress can consider, to authorize those programs for the appropriation process. Goes to the administration, usually Department of Agriculture, to undertake rulemaking, to create or modify programs. And then the USDA and grassroots organizations will conduct the outreach to help promote programs and evaluate how effective those programs are in achieving their purpose. So yeah, it's a long process. There's multiple points where we can have an influence, and this is happening now. Hearings started last year, second half of last year, I believe, and hopefully it'll be getting going soon down there. And maybe Jason can give us some more updates on the reality of things on the ground, so to speak, there. And take a breath. Do we have any questions in the chat? We did ask if folks do want to put questions, we can take them when we have time or at the end, but it looks like we're just about at time for this session anyways. So I hope you all enjoyed that crash course in the Farm Bill. There will be a quiz, just kidding. And I'll pass it to Jason to further clarify on this and to share what Friends of the Earth is doing in this realm. Thanks, Jason.
Great. Thanks so much, Marty, and thank you all for being here. I think that was a great breakdown of the Farm Bill and the fundamentals. So I'm here to talk a little bit more about the role of pesticides in the Farm Bill, as well as some ways to get involved. So as you all just sort of saw, pesticides are not directly addressed in most forms in the Farm Bill, and probably the only way that they are directly addressed is through occasionally research grants that usually include things around integrated pest management, which of course have a role to play in pesticide use in various realms. But for the most part, when we think about modern pesticide issues, the work that folks like NOFA and Friends of the Earth, the things that we work on, they're not directly addressed in the Farm Bill. EPA is responsible for the regulation and the registration of pesticides. They do all the risk management, the testing. They occasionally work with Fish and Wildlife, but it's not really part of the Farm Bill. And so at the same time, every little piece of the Farm Bill affects pesticide use in some way. And that is from things like insurance, conservation, research, etc. And so pesticide use, broadly speaking, is driven by investments in industrial scale agriculture, right? And what I mean by that, let's take one really big example in meat, right? CAFO's industrial scale animal production is heavily subsidized in a variety of ways throughout the Farm Bill. For instance, one major USDA conservation program, the Environmental Qualities Incentives Program, or EQIP for short, half or more of that program is earmarked essentially for livestock. And the way that is often spent is to support manure management strategies for CAFOs. So it ends up being a big handout for some of the largest, most consolidated, most polluting animal operations in the country. Now, of course, with the Farm Bill subsidizing those operations, you need a whole lot of feed for all of that livestock. So that, mixed with things like crop insurance and risk management strategies, heavily promote the production of cheap corn and soy. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with neonics or neonicotinoids, one of the leading causes of bee and pollinator declines, the most widely used insecticide in the world. And the main reason for that is that virtually all conventional corn grown in the United States and elsewhere is pre-treated with a neonic. So by subsidizing industrial scale livestock, you create the demand for cheap feed, and all of that cheap feed is grown using a neonicotinoid. And so that's just one way, right, in which a significant portion of the Farm Bill is actually incentivizing the use of a lot of pesticides, even though it's not directly a pesticide bill. Another way that you could look at it that's very relevant to the modern conversation on ag and climate and regenerative agriculture is investments in conservation, risk management, et cetera, may promote things like no-till and cover cropping, right, as a way to sequester more carbon. However, if you exclude funding outreach education on roller crimpers, which are a mechanical way to remove cover crops after planting that are very expensive and out of reach for a lot of farmers, you often have to rely on a synthetic herbicide to knock down all those cover crops. So if you have conservation incentives for massive monocultures of tens of thousands of acres to grow cover crops and use no-till, you're going to see a massive increase in the use of synthetic herbicides if you're not also supporting mechanical knockdown. So those are just a couple of different ways in which pesticide use is extremely closely tied to the Farm Bill without the Farm Bill ever mentioning the word pesticide, pests, etc. So if the Farm Bill itself is not directly addressing pesticides, what is? And that's, as Marty talked about, marker bills. So there are some major marker bills that currently exist. I included just the acronyms in here because it would be too long to write out and fit on my one little slide, but PACTPA is the Protect America's Children from Toxic Pesticides Act. SAPA, S-A-P-A, is the Saving America's Pollinators Act, and these are two bills that exist which severely curb pesticide use in various ways. For instance, the Saving America's Pollinators Act is directly about banning neonicotinoids and creating new ways for EPA to evaluate pesticides on a basis of their impact on pollinators. PACTPA, on the other hand, changes a whole bunch of loopholes that have allowed pesticides on the market and through the registration process improperly. It also bans certain pesticides, including neonics, etc. But what really is the role then of marker bills and the Farm Bill? So with all farm bills, there is a lengthy amendment process. It usually gets whittled down to a few key amendments that get tacked on to the Farm Bill towards the end of the process that will ultimately be hashed out as part of that snaking process with conference committees and things like that to figure out what will be in the final version. But that is where things not directly germane to the Farm Bill can be included in some way. And so what marker bills aim to do, as Marty said, is lay out a vision on a certain issue, like pesticides in this case. And so, again, like Marty said, they're not really meant to pass. And we know that there is simply not the political appetite to pass federal legislation that is directly targeting certain pesticides. So a good marker bill is written such that it is easy to pull apart, right? You could take a section out of it and it would stand on its own and be relevant on its own, because a strategy, usually connecting marker bills to the Farm Bill, is taking out those individual pieces, maybe some of the more politically possible pieces, and introducing them as amendments to the Farm Bill to maybe be included. And so what that looks like from an advocacy standpoint is, over the last 5 years since the passage of the last Farm Bill, advocates like myself and others have been pushing for these marker bills, mainly asking offices to co-sponsor the bills, educate them on the issues around them. And now when it comes time for Farm Bill, there's years built up of education of members, and it becomes much easier to say, hey, would you support an amendment that is a small piece of that bill we've talked about for years to be included? So that's one major role of marker bills, and kind of how pesticides can be more directly addressed through amendments rather than through other major programs. Other things that are important to note about the Farm Bill and opportunities around pesticides is farmer data issues, which is sort of an emergent issue. Many of you are probably familiar with precision agriculture, but if not, precision agriculture is basically the use of data, imaging, things like that to basically make pinpoint recommendations for how to use certain inputs, right? How to farm, essentially. And in the corporate world of pesticide manufacturers, what that means is companies manufacturing pesticides are also collecting tremendous amounts of data on farms, and then using that data to create algorithms for how many pesticides to use, and what products to use where and how much. What the conflict of interest is fairly obvious in that scenario, right? If you're making Roundup and then your job is to tell a farmer what herbicide to use on their farm, you're probably going to tell them to use a decent amount of Roundup. And there are really no protections influencing that relationship between farmer data, precision agriculture, and pesticide manufacturers. So that is another marker bill that will hopefully exist in the near future to sort of address that kind of glaring issue. And that's really relevant to the Farm Bill right now, because as part of the Inflation Reduction Act, the budget reconciliation bill that passed last year, pretty much one of the only real things that they did around ag and climate, besides adding a ton of funding to USDA conservation programs, which are a great way to fund sustainable practices in some ways for farmers. But one of the only other things they did was include precision agriculture as something that could be funded through those same conservation programs, which again, in theory, can be a good thing to use data to help farmers farm more sustainably. But too often that manifests in corporate-led programs that can be really problematic. And so another opportunity, hopefully, in the Farm Bill in 2023. Then the last thing that I will say on pesticides in the Farm Bill is that there is always a lot of defense that we have to play. One of the most relevant issues, both Massachusetts and elsewhere, that is a defensive work we have to do, is in 2018, there was an amendment to implement federal pesticide preemption, and that will come back. So in a nutshell, real quick, pesticide preemption in this case means local governments cannot have rules governing pesticides that are stricter than the state level, right? So in Massachusetts, unless the Massachusetts legislature, say, bans glyphosate, a local government in Massachusetts cannot ban glyphosate. They can say, we won't use it on local land, but they cannot tell private landowners what they can or can't use in terms of pesticides. So it is up to the states right now if they want to do that. Massachusetts does, most states do. 37, actually, it might actually be up to 41 states now preempt local governments on pesticide issues. So one, there are 9 states that don't, and also any state through statute, right, by passing a law, could reverse preemption and allow cities and towns to regulate pesticides. But what this amendment to the Farm Bill would do is make it so that all 50 states preempt local governments, and it's no longer up to the states whether or not they want to, which would have a massive impact on states that are taking a lot of local action on pesticides, of course. So that's one major sort of defensive battle that we will have ahead of us in the realm of pesticides. There will also be other attacks on FIFRA, that's a Federal Insecticide, Fungicide, Rodenticide Act. That's basically the main law that governs the registration of pesticides, as well as the Endangered Species Act, ESA. Endangered Species Act and pesticides interact in a lot of different ways. Predominantly, EPA has finally, after a long hiatus, resumed doing Endangered Species Act consultations on pesticide registration, essentially saying when they're checking, to see if a pesticide is safe, they have to talk to Fish and Wildlife Service about potential impacts on endangered species. And, spoiler alert, it's also usually really bad for endangered species, a lot of the pesticides that they're registering. So having that data is really important. And there can be attacks in the Farm Bill attacking that process as well. So at the end of the day, really, how to get involved and how to support marker bills is calling and emailing your legislator and asking them to co-sponsor those bills. And while that seems like a small and basic action, at the same time, a lot of these issues are pretty niche. And a lot of legislators are not going to hear a lot about them. And so it can be genuinely impactful for even a very small handful of people to reach out to their legislator and contact them on an issue that they may only get 20 calls or 20 emails about, So it could seem like a drop in the bucket, but genuinely, increasing co-sponsors, showing more support for these marker bills makes it so much easier towards the end of this process when we started asking for pieces of them to be included as amendments. So that's a quick crash course on pesticides in the Farm Bill and some opportunities that we have in 2023. Thanks again for having me, and thanks for coming.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Jason.
I think we're going to NESAWG slide.
Yep.
Okay. I'll be brief. A little bit about NESAWG and our policy work. Wanted to introduce first a little bit about who we are, although you've heard about us, but we work from Maine all the way down to West Virginia. We cover 12 Northeast states plus Washington, D.C. And we're focused on creating a farm and food system that's equitable and just for all. And we come to these conference partnerships and gatherings to be able to connect with folks, and specifically in this case with the Farm Bill, we actually launched a Farm Bill survey for several months. That was announced on our website and on our monthly newsletters. If you want to subscribe yourself to our monthly newsletter, you can go to www.nesawg.org. I just put it out there on the chat. And this survey is actually going to be reactivated. It's currently temporarily closed, but it is going to be reactivated again. And I will also drop the link to the survey for your future reference. For those organizations that did respond to the survey in these past around 6 months, there were 28 organizations, and I'm going to ask Shia maybe if you can take us to slide 22. But no, not the cloud. Yeah, thank you. And there were 28 organizations that completed our Farm Bill survey, and with those organizations having around 30 relationships with 30 Northeast members of Congress, half of whom are particularly supportive of sustainable agriculture, others not so much. The reason why it's so important to be calling and to be emailing, like Jason was mentioning. There are a wide range of policy priorities that have come forward. We'll see those later in the word cloud that was created. But these are some, on this slide, you see some of the most common things that folks said that they want to see on the 2023 Farm Bill. And again, this is a response from 28 organizations in the Northeast. But for example, people are wanting to see funding for local and regional food systems infrastructure, including investments in the local agricultural marketing program. Farm Bill has several programs, and this one is one of them. Increased support for one-to-one business and technical assistance. lots of requests for technical assistance, support for BIPOC farmers, including land access, technical assistance again coming up, and more. Farm bill that addresses systemic inequities, and we know about those inequities. The farm operators in the entire country, in the entire what is now known as the United States, but it's actually Turtle Island. The BIPOC farm operators are, for the entire country, it's under 2%, around 1.7, 1.8. So those, even access to land and those systemic inequities are huge. Again, land access programs tied to what we were just talking about, those inequities. Support for conservation, for organics and climate resilience. Beginning farmers and ranchers development program funding, another program that would want increase and continued funding, and programs that support food access and local foods. So those were some of our survey results, and Shia, if you can lead us to now the word cloud, thank you. You can see there the concepts and the needs and the ideas that were most voted are in larger font. But we see farm support, farmer support, farm support, capital funding, assistance, technical assistance, land access, beginner farmers support, and BIPOC, conservation. There's a lot of needs there, and again, we should, when you receive these slides via email after the fact, you'll also be receiving access to our farm bill survey again. With this farm bill survey, we are able to identify also the organizations that are working with the specific legislators, and the organizations that are receiving funding under specific programs that are passed by the Farm Bill every 5 years. So we can develop a regional power mapping when you submit answers to the survey, which is actually very helpful for organizing. And as NESAWG moves on to our next phase of very intentional racial equity-based transformation for the Northeast region, we will be sharing these regional power maps. We will be moving more towards landscape assessment, and we will be, and we already have some funding on developing regional stakeholder groups to start representing the states that are part of our reach, and including a policy council. So on the Zoom chat, I will drop a link for those who are interested, especially those voices who are Black, Indigenous, migrant, immigrant, farmers of color, who have been historically silenced, marginalized, and not at the decision-making table. Please, please sign up, and we'll tell you more. We'll share with you more what what this opportunity means of being part of a regional stakeholder group and a policy council to leverage the power that we all have as a community, and calling a legislator or meeting with a legislator for one-on-one is one thing. When we do a collective phone bank, or we organize and large numbers, and we make demands and decisions in large numbers, you know, the voices amplify. So we encourage you to sign up for if you're interested in representing your region, your area, and especially giving a voice and being a liaison with your community of color and Aboriginal tribes and communities. So the other thing that I wanted to mention is, as we move forward in policy advocacy at NESAWG, the Farm Bill for this year is going to be a priority for sure, but we will also be working on policy to help restore the balance of Mother Earth. Maybe that is something that can be included in a marker bill. But we will be closely working with Aboriginal communities towards obtaining Mother Earth rights and Mother Earth personhood status. We can develop technical expertise with the land. We can improve in our conservation and our organic produce, but it is essential that we restore our balance with Mother Earth, that we are aligned with Mother Earth, that we call and work together with our Aboriginal communities who are the inherent keepers of the land and who have the expertise and have protected the land from time immemorial. So NESAWG will be bringing a big focus on including the voices of Aboriginal communities in the Farm Bill and in the policy advocacy moving forward. I think that's it, what I wanted to share for now, unless there are some questions for me. Otherwise, I'll turn it over to Marty.
There's a question from Esther.
Yes, my question is, I'm following to my cell phone. I would like to know if you will be able to send an email or a general emails for everybody who participating, so I can be able to access those information and also to sign those bills. That would be great, because I'm not in my desktop right now and I'm using my phone. Thank you.
Do we have her email?
Yeah, we should have everyone's everyone who registered. Thank you for that question, and thank you for joining us on your phone. We will be covering at the end some of the action steps and ways that folks can get involved, and that will certainly include receiving emails from NOFA and our other organizations represented here on opportunities to take action on the Farm Bill. We'll also have our website, nofamass.org/policy, has a Farm Bill section that will also include marker bills and specific action alerts. Does that answer your question?
Formally, also, do we, if we already download the app, WOVA, do we be able also to sign anything we're gonna sign to WOVA?
That's a great question. I mean, I in theory, we can continue to use Whova, I believe. David can share more on that, but that is not our primary mobilization platform currently. But that might be that sounds like it could be a great idea. David, do you know anything about that? Is it something we could continue to use in theory?
Possibly, but it would be best to go with the system we currently have in place with the email lists.
Yeah.
And so after, we'll make sure that we have your email, and yeah, any kind of long range and communication outside of this weekend would be best to do through that way, at least in the meantime.
Makes sense.
Thank you, David.
And sorry, just to chime in again, I dropped everyone's contact info in Whova on our session chat. So if you want to check it out there, you can. And as Marty shared, we'll share that information again at the end too.
Great. All righty. So we got
Okay,
there
Marty.
might be. Yep, great. So I guess I'm back on here. So NOFA Mass, has been working with our sister chapters in the other states across the Northeast over more than a year now. We actually had a listening session at the winter conference last year that several of you were at. We also had a listening session at the summer conference that all of our sister chapters collaborated on. And working with the output of those listening sessions, the comments and suggestions and priorities that we heard, we worked together with our sister chapters to identify our region's greatest farming and food system needs and policies that can address them. And we looked at the policy recommendations and statements from many of our allied organizations, and really wanted to center in principles in whatever the minutia of policies that we make recommendations on, the marker bills, et cetera. We wanted to work at the human scale of what are the principles that drive this action. So these principles you see listed here, and I'll read just through the headings, came together again with that input from the listening sessions and through careful evaluation of the campaigns of many of our allies, national and regional organizations. And let's see. So I'll just read out these 6 here. Just thinking if I have enough time to get through the actual descriptions of them. I'll give you a little bit more because a lot of work went into this language, and let me just share with you. So we want a farm bill that, one, invests in and protects the integrity of organic and agroecological practices as a core solution to our climate and biological crises. We know that organic practices improve soil health, promote biodiversity above and below ground, and require biological, mechanical, and cultural means of pest and disease control like cover crops and crop rotation. By actively working with natural systems and avoiding the use of synthetic fertilizers and toxic pesticides, organic and agroecological systems eliminate some of the most potent greenhouse gas emissions, and all while sequestering carbon and protecting wildlife and their habitats. So we want a farm bill that protects the integrity of the National Organic Program and invests a substantial proportion of its funding to support expansion of organic and agroecological systems, with a goal of 30% of farmland being covered in being managed agroecologically or organically by 2030. An audacious goal, but it sounds good, 30 by 30. Number 2, ensures fair treatment and just livelihoods for farmers and workers throughout the food and farming system. Farming is essential work that at its best provides food for our communities while nourishing and protecting ecosystems and contributing to the creation of community wealth. At present, however, much of the federal policy works to extract wealth, labor, and knowledge from those working the land to the detriment of farmers, workers, eaters, and the environment. So we need a farm bill that reestablishes parity prices that are in balance with the rest of the economy through equitable and just supply management with mandatory participation in conservation measures. We say it's time to end the era of cheap food funded by exploiting farm workers in the land. We want a farm bill that ensures living wages and dignified livelihoods for every worker throughout the food supply, and to end the exclusion of farm workers from labor protections. Number 3, invest in rural communities, increases fairness and resilience of local and regional supply chains, and breaks up consolidation in agriculture. To enable rural prosperity and increase local food system resilience, the Farm Bill should expand organic and regional food processing, distribution, and marketing infrastructure. The Farm Bill must also reverse the devastation to local economies caused by hyper-consolidation of food and agribusiness industries by enforcing existing antitrust laws, limiting mergers, guaranteeing fair contracts, and increasing corporate accountability to frontline communities. Number 4, a Farm Bill that centers racial justice across all programs and repairs past and ongoing racialized harm. We've already covered how the USDA has a history of enshrining white supremacy. So we want the USDA to work to support access to land, credit, and other resources for self-determination for farmers of color and other marginalized communities. Number 5, promotes food sovereignty for disadvantaged communities and ensures nutrition security for all. we want to shift the food system to localized food sovereignty with access to farmland and farming resources for BIPOC, women, LGBTQ+, the young, under-resourced, and farmers from other marginalized populations. And excuse me, a big part of that is access to nutrient-dense food that is free of toxic pesticides, such as that is grown by organic farms. And skipping ahead, finally, number 6, we want a farm bill that eliminates the use of toxic substances on farmland and in our food system while supporting a just transition for farmers. The use of these poisons, what we call xenobiotic materials, they by definition interrupt living systems and the soil ecosystems which nourish plants and animals, including humans. So we want to end public policies that subsidize this pollution and require manufacturers of pesticides, herbicides, and genetically engineered plants to pay to clean up that contamination from which they profit. We want to push for a precautionary principle in introducing new materials and products and to carefully weigh the climate impact of fossil fuels, their derivatives, especially the synthetic fertilizers. We feel that these policies are necessary to protect biodiversity, the health of farmers, farm workers, wildlife, and everyone who eats these products. And do want to underscore the need for a just transition. We want to provide for these farmers who've been coerced into, chemical dependent GMO use of concentrated animal feeding operations, that whole industrial treadmill with those incentives, government incentives and programs. We want to switch that to have incentives to transition their operations to agroecological systems with localized markets. So you can read, we'll have an extensive set of policy recommendations, and you can read more about these principles on our website, along with the marker bills as they come out. Through our friends at Friends of the Earth, National Organic Coalition, and National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition will be helping navigate our advocacy at the federal level, and we'll have those all sorted by these principles. So again, we can have our action rooted in principles. The picture you see here, easier for me to say, is from a visit during Congressman McGovern's 2-day farm tour, which he does every year. And this year, we were able to take an active role in supporting that farm tour by helping to line up stops on that tour, and actually had quite a few stops at NOFA farms, and some really great examples of regenerative agriculture and organic agriculture in Western Mass and Central Mass. And this is a picture of Deb Habib at Seeds of Solidarity talking to Jim McGovern there on the right, about things that are important to regenerative agriculture. I think here she was talking about how they really keep all the soil covered everywhere. You don't see any bare soil on their farm. But we had some really unscripted, to be honest with you, resonance with the principles that we have there listed. We heard from several farmers on the tour a lot of these similar points and priorities. So Congressman McGovern here, until recently, he was he sort of changed the position of power with the new Congress, but he's still our champion on the House Agriculture Committee, and is part of the House Organic Caucus, has attended our conferences, very much understands the connection of healthy soils to healthy foods to healthy communities, and he's been hearing from us, and he's been hearing from you, and he's been hearing from these farmers about these principles, and we very much have a champion who can help shape the farm bill. So as this process unfolds, that we outlined previously, we're going to continue to collaborate with our partners here, with our other partners like National Organic Coalition and NSAC, National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition, and work with our champion in Congress, Jim McGovern, to keep you all abreast of opportunities to inform and to join these advocacy campaigns. I think that's what I got. Good. I think we'll have some room for conversation here. So on our second to last slide here, we'll provide some jumping off points for discussion, I hope, as far as getting involved. We have some opportunities on the horizon between our respective organizations. And we do want to take some time to hear your thoughts on how you see yourself, or you want to see us as organizations engage on this. Jason, do you want to touch base on the market bills again, just to drive that home?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So again, these marker bills, I mentioned some for pesticides, there will be others, are not yet introduced because we just started a new Congress, but they will be soon. And the best way to get involved on them is to contact your legislator and ask them to co-sponsor them. So as Marty said, you know, he and I and others will coordinate on making sure that there is as much of a one-stop shop as possible to see marker bills, a quick summary on what's in them, and how to contact your legislator to ask them to co-sponsor those. But it is the best way to advocate for priorities that are not directly addressed in the Farm Bill. Otherwise, for issues that are directly addressed in the Farm Bill, there are ways to advocate for changes to those that don't require amendments and such, and so that's like a slightly different process.
Great. Thanks again for that recap, Jason, and look forward to tag teaming that with you. And we'll certainly be in communication over coming weeks and months on those farm bills, keeping the NOFA mass, the market bills for the Farm Bill, to keep the NOFA mass page up to date with action priorities from Friends of the Earth, as well as NSAC, National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition, and NOC. And you'll see it on the slides there, but do want to give a special shout out to NSAC for providing a lot of the materials we use in this presentation today on the Farm Bill 101. They've been a longstanding, champions for sustainable agriculture that we've been working with for years at the federal level. So yeah, big shout out to NSAC. Another thing that I want to put on folks' radar as a way to get involved, something that I'm going to be sending emails about and gauging interest in, is the Rally for Resilience that has been called in DC, March 6th through 8th. And there's a whole bunch of organizations, including NSAC, the Rural Coalition, the Heal Food Alliance, National Young Farmers Coalition, Kiss the Ground, American Agriculture Movement, more than I can list right now, but I'll paste that in the chat. And Farm Aid is a primary partner on as well. And I think it was actually initially announced by Willie Nelson on stage a couple months ago. And we're looking forward to that. But we're considering organizing a bus to actually go down to DC for this 2-day rally. We're going to want to put out some feelers and see if there's interest in that, and we can get some subsidized funding for something like that. And there will be satellite events in the Northeast, to happen concurrently in that time. I see Matthew willing to hop on the bus. Great. So like I said, we're going to send out an email and engage some interest, but it'd be great to get 50 folks together and have a trip to DC. Cristina, did you want to talk about recruiting for the Policy Council?
Sorry, I was muted. I will say again, I was typing on the chat, but I will say again to refer to the spreadsheet that I dropped the link, and I can drop it again. We are working to hopefully have some stipends for folks who are joining the stakeholder group at the regional level, which will include policy advocacy and policy council responsibilities. We are not at the point where we would love to pay salaries to people, but at this point it's going to be stipends. And yeah, we really encourage you to sign up and have we can have an orientation and more information of what this involvement would be. It would be more of a 10-month involvement, but only meeting it's very, very doable. So please contact us. Please fill out the information form, and I'll drop it at the chat again. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Cristina. Yeah, I'm just scrolling through the chats here to see if anyone has any other recommendations here. But this is kind of an open time. I'm glad we're able to get through all that content. I see Lenore's hand up there. Lenore, did you want to come on? Hi, Lenore.
Hello, beloved Marty and everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to ask, it's sort of a specific and broad question. I think of agroforestry as a practice that is an Aboriginal practice and an agroecological practice that is not the way we farm in our country. It's not the way it was set up, but it's one of the most climate resilient approaches there is, and one of the most ecosystem friendly, healthy there is. And I'm wondering, given that it is that kind of practice and that our principles would embody that, is that something that can be embedded in the Farm Bill in some way? Support for that, financially subsidizing that. It's not the way we do business, but we need to. I mean, deforestation was one of the reasons we got in this mess to begin with. And farming with that kind of, it's like beyond permaculture.
It's a great question and suggestion. Jason, do you I don't know. I would have to see if that's even something possible, maybe something to make a statement on. But do you have any thoughts or insights, Jason?
Yeah, certainly. There are a lot of efforts to improve USDA conservation programs to, in particular, be more attentive to climate impacts, since as of now, only a small portion of USDA conservation funding actually supports practices like agroforestry that help with things like carbon sequestration, climate mitigation. So there is absolutely room as part of some of those proposals, and it is included in many of them, to basically include pieces of agroforestry in existing conservation programs. And that's probably the best way to be promoting specific practices like that.
And you'll let us know, right? With all of this letting us know, you'll let us know about supporting that too, right?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Great idea, Lenore. Great. I see. So we're talking about basically crowdsourcing other actions, campaigns, things that you see happening, want to see happening, want to jump in, be a part of. Love to hear it. I see Ellen with a hand up there. Ellen.
I just have to say thank you to Cristina, Marty, and Jason, and whoever else works on these policies, from the just being in there in the weeds, because I would be ripping my hair out if I had to, deal with this sometimes. It just, we were discussing in our group earlier, sometimes it's so frustrating when, we know what to do, we know great solutions, and then we have to go up about a bureaucracy that's like 40 years behind on some levels. So I just wanted to say that. I'm gonna request that we be bold with a lot of things too, but I'm gonna be very specific. I'm gonna ask, how can we offer that same kind of listening tour, farm tour? I have Rep. Auchincloss, Ayanna Presley, folks in Eastern Mass as well. Because I think if we can get like our whole delegation on board, and and I'm sure many of them are, but beyond on board, being full-on champions of our vision of the future. So I'm going to put that out there. And then in terms of other campaigns, you know me, Marty, and folks, I'm going to say, let's be super bold and go for a complete revamping of Massachusetts agriculture. And so that, we can be offering money, free training for people to transition to organic, in land care as well as ag. So like, how can we make it so easy that there's like no way that somebody can say no? And then we create legislation around it. So ultimately banning pesticides in Massachusetts. Yes, folks, banning pesticides in Massachusetts with some amazing alternatives instead, so that we won't even be thinking of the word pesticide in 5 years. And that's that.
Great. Thanks, Ellen. I'll just say on the first part, the McGovern tour, it is the McGovern tour. Like he has been doing that for years, and has been very proactive about wanting to represent the voice of agriculture in Congress. And I know and assume, I understand that other members of Congress are invited to those, and we have seen, actually, I think we had Senator Markey's office actually there on this most recent tour. And I think it's also a matter of specialization among the delegation, that they see that, agriculture, Congressman McGovern to be the point on agriculture. But that also means that if we get Congressman McGovern to understand these issues, he represents the delegation on these issues. You see what I'm saying? So I feel very pleased that we have him as a champion. And I hear you. Getting the other members educated on these things is going to be important as well. And maybe what we can do is engage all of you who have other members of Congress as your representatives and senators to invite them to these farm tours when they happen, and see if we can at least get staffers there. I could see that as one solid way of doing it. And then as far as supporting organic, transition to organic, that is a big part of the Farm Bill, and we'll see on our website. You'll see under those different headings, like specifically about supporting organic. That's the focus of the National Organic Coalition, and they've been taking an approach of what provisions in every one of those 12 titles can support organic programs. How can all existing programs support and make it easier and directly pay farmers and to engage in conservation practices to reduce the use of pesticides and synthetic fertilizers, et cetera. And to your big picture ideas, love it. I feel like that's exactly what NOFA Mass hopes to aspire to with everyone's help here, is to expand organic cultivation and make chemical dependent agriculture obsolete, because we can simply outgrow it. So yeah, thank you for that.
Can I just add real quickly? I think that some of the people in this room need to be thinking about running for office in Massachusetts, because how are we going to flip our legislature, which is often, we also need to really be reaching out to Maura Healy and her team. But I really just want to encourage, because we have some brilliant minds here. Maybe I'm looking at you, Marty, and looking at you, Laura. I don't know who I'm looking at, Laura. But I guess what I'm trying to say, folks, is that it's going to be some of us who need to actually be in the offices on Beacon Hill. We're great advocates, but some of us might actually need to be there so that we can really flip some votes on the state and really come up with bold legislation.
Always a good reminder. Thank you for that, Ellen. Yeah, let's get involved in local and state and federal government. Carol, I see your hand up there.
Hello, thank you for all this excellent information. I'm actually curious, what is the status on the Healthy Soils Act within the Economic Development Bill for Massachusetts?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Carol. I can speak to that briefly. And I was actually I did break the news of the annual meeting yesterday, but we're going to have an official release with our coalition partners later this month. But you're referring to the creation of the Healthy Soils program by the passage of the Healthy Soils Bill, which was part of the economic development package that Governor Baker signed at the beginning of 21.
Exactly.
Yep. And so that program, the development of that program has basically been in a holding pattern since then, awaiting the release of the Healthy Soils Action Plan, which we were expecting May of 21. And I'm happy that I can say that it has finally been released. The Healthy Soils Action Plan was in fact released by the Baker administration on his very last day in office on January 4th. So the Healthy Soils Action Plan is published by the state. We have a state approved roadmap for healthy soils practices that will guide the development of the Healthy Soils program. So that's very much going to be a big part of our work this year, is to work with the Commission for Soil, Water, and Related Resources, whoever the new Secretary of Energy and Environmental Affairs will be, and I'm looking forward to working with Climate Chief Hoffer, especially in the Healy administration, to make sure that we give this program the proper funding and attention to scale out these practices. So, bit of good news there to bring in towards the end of this. So, thank you for that, Carol. Let's see if we got. And I haven't been able to scan the chats there. If anyone else has tabs on any other questions or suggestions there, I'm looking for hands. Don't see any. Again, this is our open time.
I
Happy
raised
to
my
have.
hand.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much for, I like the way you elaborate all those details. I really appreciate. One, my question is, how small diverse farmer, or we can say minority farmers can have access to those policies?
Is a question about involved in modifying those policies or
Yes,
actually?
yes. Because most time I went to some seminar or the electing people, we've been blocked out every time we try to be part in any sort of uh, not legislature, but any sort of elective organization. We've been blocked out as, because sometimes people don't like our accent or something, but we are farmers. We speak one language, it's Mother Earth. So what can we do in that bills to help every farmer to be counted as farmer, not as the way maybe society portrayed or the way people are portrayed, different, accent and different ethnicity of farmers. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. I don't know if Cristina or anyone else wants to take that, but that's a very powerful and pertinent question that we need to center and address. So thank you, Esther.
I was writing on the chat.
Oh, good. Well, I mean, I'll just say that that a big part of addressing that is how we organize, and it's how we center the issues of minority farmers in our work, and work with the grassroots, like people on this call, to inform our policy recommendations. And I mean, I'd be happy to talk to you one-on-one and see certainly what we can do to help connect the dots if it's a matter of getting meetings with congressional staffers on these issues. That's certainly something that I'm sure folks on this call would be happy to help with. And then I don't know if anyone else has any other suggestions, but thank you again.
Yeah, and being connected to the organizations that are already, like Rural Coalition, NESAWG, and then the Policy Council that we are inviting people to join. So these are some of the ways as well to have this community leverage and voice.
Great. So we can expand this now. I mean, if there's any other questions, concerns, or anything, requests for resources, in addition to any other great ideas, I don't want to cut that off. This is a great opportunity to tap into the collective genius of this group here. So we got 10 minutes here, and I'm glad we have this space. So
I think there were some questions or some suggestions on the chat, and the chat has been going. So I don't know that if we missed them. I think that we missed some, and maybe those questions that have not been answered, or those suggestions, if you could unmute yourself. I don't know.
I see Tanya has a question, and I did see that it was sent here, but Tanya has her hand raised. Tanya, do you want to come on and ask your question?
Sure, thank you. And thanks for reposting that in the chat. I had recently heard something about the SUSTAIN Act, which is something that would allow corporate contributions to USDA conservation programs, which just seemed incredibly concerning and would undermine potentially a lot of the work in the Farm Bill. And I'm just curious if this is something you've been following, if you see it as something that has legs, and whether it's something we should be following and be concerned about, whether there's an effort to introduce that kind of thing into the Farm Bill in some way when they talk about funding. Just curious what, if there's anything that any thoughts you have on that.
That was not on my radar. I'll say I'm actually searching my inbox to see if I've even been getting emails about it. But I don't know if
Jason just posted something.
Oh, great.
Food and Power. There's the latest on the SUSTAIN Act.
Yeah, so I'm happy to fill folks in. The Sustains Act passed as part of the Omnibus Appropriations Bill at the end of last year. And as Tanya said, it authorizes the Secretary of Agriculture to accept corporate contributions to USDA conservation programs. Most concerning about this, in the past, corporations have been technically allowed to give grants to USDA. They just didn't often, because why would they? Now it allows those companies to earmark that money for specific purposes. So for instance, they could give money to a specific program and say it's only for specific farming practices. And there's also a provision for those of you who may have been tracking issues of carbon offsets and carbon markets in agriculture, that essentially if a farmer takes money through USDA, that is corporate money, they have to sign a contract with that company, giving away at least part of that carbon credit or environmental service credit to that company. So it is a very concerning development in that amounts to a somewhat of a privatization of USDA conservation programs. That being said, USDA will have to come out with rulemaking, meaning they will have to open up a public comment period to sort of finalize their plan for how to actually implement this. And as part of that, there will be room to essentially advocate that USDA not take corporate money, because again, they don't have to. It's up to the secretary. It is a very imperfect remedy to a potentially serious problem, but that will be an opportunity in the next couple of months as USDA sort of gets its ducks in a row and starts to look at how they would actually implement this.
Awesome. Thank you, Jason. I'm so glad we have you here on the ground there with the intel. So thank you. Really appreciate it. Great. Let's see. Looking for, I did see another question in the chat here. Jill asked, do you know how the Supreme Court decision about the EPA will impact its ability to deal with pesticides and herbicides and endangered species? Oh boy. That's another thing. I think they're referring to the ruling that they can't regulate is that carbon as a pollutant? Was that the decision? Or again, not something I follow quite closely, so I don't know. It's a great question. Jason, do you know that one?
I'm not sure exactly what decision is being referenced.
No. All right, maybe I'd love to hear it, Jill, if you have more clarification there. I see Tanya. Yep, thank you for compliment there. All right, let's see. Ellen, do you have another question?
Yeah, I guess I was thinking this for Jason and for other people. Have we ever written an alternate farm bill? So almost like having our own constitution or our own practices that, because there's something about the power of manifestation of like putting it out there in the universe, right? Like, oh, well, have you seen this? You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that you put all of your efforts and all of your resources to it, but it just seems like it'd be interesting. Maybe you've done it. I don't know.
So I don't think the NGO community has really gotten together and written something like that. I did post something in the chat. Probably the closest version of that comes from Representative Blumenauer from Oregon, called the Food and Farm Act, that was introduced in 2018. That kind of represents like a progressive rewritten farm bill. And again, it's certainly imperfect, but it is kind of the best example of this kind of exercise. And I think also illustrates the gargantuan amount of work required to sort of go title by title and propose something like that. But certainly I think, you see with all of the different platforms like NOFA masses and NESAWGs and others, it gets towards that, but I don't know of like something similar to the Food and Farm Act that is updated since 2018.
I mean, if we could get funding and, have an organization, I'm sure a lot of us wouldn't mind being part of. I mean, just to, put the ideas out there in the universe and manifest them.
Sure. Another great idea. Thanks, Ellen. Yeah, I feel like I've heard that idea. I feel like so it's definitely out there, but I haven't. That'd be a pretty monumental effort to try to get consensus among all the NGOs on something like that, and very well maybe worthwhile endeavor. So that's something I'll ask our folks at NSAC and knock about.
Yep.
Cool, great.
It's something that the Regional Policy Council could develop if they're in agreement.
There
Yep.
you go. There you go.
You know, I'm looking for some gainful employment with a paycheck, so, you know, I
Oh.
want writing services. I'll even take notes. There you go, Lenore, Public Manifesto.
Yeah, there you go. Cool. All right. Well, I see I don't see much more coming in here, and I do see the time ticking here after a very active 2 days of conferencing here. So I'll give us just another second if anyone else has anything bubbling up. Otherwise, no. Cool. Well, great. Well, I guess I'll say, yeah, thank you once again for joining us. I'm looking forward to connecting with some of you further. The last slide there does have our, thank you very much, has our contact info. You should also be able to find it in Whova as well. And, you know, everyone will be getting follow-up email from NOFA. Please do let us know what you thought about this session. We'll have a link in the chat for the evaluation form. And yeah, don't forget, we still have the auction going until, what is it, 6 p.m. I actually need to go back in there because I got outbid. But it's another great way to support our educational efforts here. We also have the bulk order program for all your gardening supplies and farming supplies. Get them at a discount that runs through the end of January. And then otherwise, yeah, keep a lookout for our policy emails coming from NOFA Mass. You can, of course, get in touch with our co-presenters here to get on their email lists. And yeah, again, there's the evaluation. I think that's it.